Hello guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another long overdue episode of the podcast. Remarkable how inconsistent I've been over the past month. Long story short, I've moved to St Andrews to work as a caddy master in Kingsbarns this year. It's been such an amazing month for me. There's so many guys in the caddy program that are like-minded to myself, and obviously there was an adaptation period of 2 or 3 weeks where everything felt not familiar, and then I feel like I've really settled in sort of the last week or two, so it's been great, which means I can now be more consistent with YouTube and start uploading my weekly podcast again. So in this week's segment, I'm going to include a guy that I spoke to a while ago called Mike Cappucci. So Mike has created an app where amateur golfers can compete with anyone around the world just by inputting their scores on the app. A really bright guy, been involved in the golf industry just recently, but tech for quite a while, based out of San Francisco. Absolute pleasure to talk to him. And for the weeks going forward, I want to talk to as many people who are driving progress and change in the golf industry, whether it's through building tech, the way they teach it. And I'm obviously going to be uploading more podcasts pretty much on a weekly level. So looking forward to rattling these out. Obviously being in Scotland, this will give me an opportunity to play a lot of golf courses. Going to try and upload a few course vlogs if I can. We'll see how that plays out. But without further ado, enjoy the podcast. See you in a bit. Hi, I'm Graham. I'm a golfer who's passionate about technology and also a caddy in the north coast of Ireland. Me and my team are on a journey to create an app for the golf caddying industry, and while we're at it, we want to speak to as many interesting people creating exciting projects within the golf industry. I believe the future of this game is bright, my friends, and this is the Future of Golf podcast. Welcome everyone back to the Future of Golf podcast. This is episode number 11, and today we have a California native, Mike Cappucci. It seems like every conversation is with people out in America, which is fantastic. I love meeting new people. Mike is joining us today. How are you, Mike?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm awesome. Funny story, I guess, how myself and Mike met. So it was on actually a Discord chat of probably the most infamous golf Web3 project, Linksdow. And I mentioned actually about one of the podcasts I'd done previously. And Mike dropped a little line about a product that he was working on. Probably should have given you an intro there. So Mike is working on a golf app called Join ClubGolf, I believe it is.
So I call it Club, but Join ClubGolf is the website. Yeah, it's called Club though.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to sort of dive into your journey within the golf industry. Maybe a bit before you actually started creating the app. So were you a lifelong golfer then? You mentioned that this was sort of a problem that affected you on a personal level. So how did you actually get into the game?
Yeah, so I started playing, I don't even know, probably 4 or 5 years old with my grandfather, and just loved it as like a weekend activity. I never got, I'd say I've played for a long time, but never played a lot at one time. Like I wasn't the guy that was playing Saturday, Sunday, working on the game constantly. I just loved it, and I played a bunch of other sports growing up and mostly played hockey, and hockey translates really well to golf, so it's kind of easy for me to just go play a weekend round and play well enough to be happy. And it was a fun thing to do with my grandfather, my dad, my family members. And when I was younger, basically all of my friends were people I played sports with. Mm-hmm. And so we would play hockey, street hockey, football, baseball, wiffle ball, anything that we could do. But like that was our bond with sports, right? It's like some sort of competition and just trying to beat each other up essentially. And then when we got older, we couldn't really play basketball. I'm 33 now, and in like our 20s, we couldn't be like playing basketball or football. So it just turned into golf. So every weekend was just battling with boys on the golf course. And so I lived on the East Coast growing up. I lived outside of Boston, and most of my friend network and my golf network is on the East Coast. And then when I moved to the Bay Area for work, well, my wife's work, and we moved in 2018, I kind of lost that network, and I've built a new network, but those friendships are still there. And we're constantly texting when they're playing, right? Like there's a match happening. I'm feeling the FOMO of not being there. And If somebody's playing, we're texting like, "Hey, how'd you play?" We're talking back and forth about holes, different shots, etc. And so last year in the spring, I was kind of just playing with a bunch of ideas and thinking to myself, man, it would be so much easier if I could just see what was going on the East Coast and if we could set up little battles. And then I thought, oh man, how nice would it be if I could be playing one of my courses in California and one of my buddies could be playing on the East Coast and we could play against each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no reason why we can't do that. If we trust each other, we can even bet some money maybe, right? So I was thinking like, okay, the battles don't have to end just because I'm not with them. And then even if I was on the East Coast, people my age, I have 2 kids now, all of my friends have kids, we work quite a bit. Like the chances of getting like the same group together that we were getting together in our 20s is just so slim. So trying to create a way for us to still compete and battle and leverage just kind of semi-modern technology was kind of the original idea. And so we launched a beta product last year, which was essentially just a digital scorecard with like a feed so you could see what people were or when people were playing, how they were playing. And that was kind of it. I never wanted it to be social, but that was kind of like the original idea. And then we just let people use it for a little while. And then we started to kind of push a little bit on what I was originally thinking, which is the competition piece and the betting. And so now we're kind of in design mode. I should say we just finished design mode, and now we're going to start building the competition features. And then we're hoping to have betting coming out by the summer. So we can basically get back to our old ways and just do it a little bit differently, not on the course, but we may not be on the course together, but we can still battle.
Yeah, even on the course, like I can relate to that because when I was playing junior competitions growing up, you're always sort of looking in the group behind to see how your mates are getting on, and there'd be a hole in the course I would play in where you would always meet with people behind you, so you'd always shouting over like, how are you getting on? So yeah, you mentioned Boston there. I mentioned I'm actually traveling to New York in March. I'm traveling also to Boston. I was curious. Did you grow up playing a lot of golf in Boston, and what course would you recommend for anyone that's traveling there?
Yeah, I played a decent amount in Boston. There's a lot of really nice public courses in like central Massachusetts. I can send you a few of those, but I think Redtail is a good one if you want to drive. Maybe I think it's like an hour from Boston. That's public. I think semi-private you can get out is a course just outside of Boston. Oh my God, I'm blanking on the name right now. Granite Links. Granite Links is a really nice course. You have great views of Boston. It's a challenging course, very much like Target Golf. So maybe a little different than what you're used to. But really nice views of Boston, really nice course, good facility to get some practice in. So yeah, those would be good ones. But I'll think on that. I'll let you know before you head out and make some recommendations for sure.
I'll have to get used to hitting flop shots around there, and usually I get the 8 iron out and just hit like the little chaser up there.
I need to learn some of those shots for sure. I need to learn that game, the Irish game.
Yeah, well, it's just like you adapt to what you've grown up doing, isn't it? So I'm sure any listener in the UK, there's a lot of parkland golf also in the UK. So a lot of people have grown up playing that sort of airborne game around the greens. But maybe since 15 or 16, I played links golf. So you just adapt. Like in some days you can be hitting putter from 30 yards out just to like chase it up there because it just makes sense with the undulation of the ground. But I mean, if you watch the PGA Tour for a few hours, like all of them are just getting their 60-degree around the greens.
It's ridiculous.
Lob it into orbit.
It's crazy. Yeah, I have a buddy who putts from anywhere inside 50 yards, and he claims it's because he does go to Ireland every year to play, and he claims it's because of that. But it's really just because he has terrible hands and he can't chip. So.
Yeah, he has an excuse. I know the Guinness has affected him while he's been over here, and he's just he hasn't got it back since then.
Exactly. He hasn't been able to unwind it. Yeah,
absolutely.
No, that's awesome.
So you touched there on the product that you're building. So I guess from my perspective at the minute, it seems like a social experience where you can sort of check how your buddies are actually getting on in a round of golf, regardless of if they're in the group behind or even in a different location, a different time. Is it almost like a sort of a competitive league where you can play against your friends? Is that the sort of angle that you're taking with it?
Yeah, so I think the original pain point for me, the original kind of outcome that I was looking for was exactly what you first described, just visibility. I wanted to see how people were playing. I just kind of, like, I missed the boys a little bit. I wanted to see what was going on, and I wanted to be able to share what I was doing and have it happen in a format that was little bit more specific to golf. Like text messages just aren't quite the same. Whereas if I just have a digital scorecard, I can see all the holes. I can see, like had a good round going, blew up on 7. I can see what happened, right? And then we included little post-round recaps, like little videos where you could talk about your round.
That's nice.
So that was kind of like the first concept. But now we're definitely pushing more towards the original idea, which was to set up full-on competitions. And I almost think about it more like fantasy. I don't know, you probably don't play fantasy football, but
I know what you're talking about.
In the States, like fantasy football, it's like, okay, Tuesday hits and you're setting your lineup, whatever, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday hits, you're setting your lineup. And then the weekend happens and you're tracking everything. And you're tracking your comparison and who you're playing against. And so there's kind of this like flow through the week when you're in season. And so we're kind of trying to borrow that experience a little bit. So the way that we see it is like, okay, you set your tee times for the weekend on whatever, Monday, Tuesday. You know when you're going to play, whether it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever it is. And then we have a groups feature where you can put all your buddies together and have your specific group, and you could have multiple groups. So in the States, you might have like your high school friends, you might have your college friends, and then you might have like people you work with or people you live around, whatever. Like maybe we get like a linked out group going, right?
Yeah.
And then you see everybody that has tee times, and then you basically set up your matches. And so you could set up a head-to-head match. So we have this like a couple concepts. So head-to-head, net score to par. So if you're playing a different course than me, we can just normalize everything with handicaps, course handicaps, and then you basically would say, okay, net score to par, who's better against their course? And so that way we can play anyone, anywhere. And so you could play one round and have 10 different head-to-head matches going on. So that's one idea. And then the other piece is, okay, if you have a group, say you have 16 people and they're all playing that weekend, could we set up like a Ryder Cup style match? So could we do something where it's like head to head? So we set each of the individual matches and we just kind of like play it that way. The way I see it is you'll probably have a couple people in each group who are kind of the leaders, or at least the ones willing to set things up and put effort into that. And then you'll have others who are just like, I just want to play and put my score in and see what happens. So that's kind of where we're headed, is more like kind of like you were saying earlier before we started recording, where right now it's a little bit more strict to like, okay, you got caddies at clubs, and if you want to use a caddy, you got to go to that club. We're trying to kind of spread things out a little bit where it's a little bit more decentralized and you can kind of play anyone, anywhere, anytime kind of thing. So like you could play on a Thursday, I might be playing on a Sunday. You play first, post a number, and then on Sunday I know what I got to go do.
Yeah. I can only imagine the abuse that you'll be getting through the phone while your round is going on. Like if you go off that bad start, your guy would just be watching you saying, "Oh, don't blow up, blow up." I could just imagine.
Exactly. That's exactly what we're looking for, because I think that's like basically what all of my friends bond over, right? Is like just chirping each other and playing in competition. Like that's what these friendships are really about. It's kind of pathetic, I'm sure, to some people, but that's what it's about for us. And so I love it, and I think that's where we're headed.
Yeah, I have had summers pretty much made in that down at the club. Whenever you're spending time with your friends, like I personally as a caddy, I might go out and work in the morning, and then you have a free couple hours in the afternoon. So we always used to take buggies out and just ride around the course. Maybe once we're of legal age, we would take a few beverages out with us as well.
Perfect.
And play a bit of music. But I think that's it, because often, especially when you're starting golf, or maybe on the other end when you're competitive with it, you can almost get lost in the seriousness of the game. It can get quite intense for a lot of people, and a lot of people give up because of that, because there's just no progress. Do you think like creating an environment of fun is an important part of what you're trying to build?
Yeah, I felt like all of the golf apps, which I think is a necessary thing to have, but I felt like most of the golf apps were really focused on personal improvement. And there are some apps out there that are aids to tournaments, so that you could get visibility into what people are shooting. Like if you're on like a boys trip, you can kind of see what's going on if you set up a tournament, and that's great. But then on the other side of the spectrum is just apps that are dedicated to helping you get better. So like putting in your putts after a round, putting in your fairways and regulation, greens and regulation, etc. There's an app called 18 Birdies that has this AI golf coach, which sounds really, really cool. But it seems like most of what people are focused on is the improving upon your game, which is awesome. I think that's great. For me, I've always been more into it as a competition against other people. I like the competition against myself, and I'm really dedicated to getting better for sure. Especially now, like I said, I've played for a long time, but I've never played a lot at one time until like the last few months. Which, to your point a few minutes ago or a few seconds ago, is like it can be frustrating when you're playing a lot more and you don't feel like you're getting any better. And so I think that this is nice because even if you're not getting much better, or there's a period where you don't feel like you're getting better, at least your handicap's there to help you stay competitive. And if you're at least winning a few matches against your buddies, even if you're not playing your best, you have say you're not where you want to be. You're saying, okay, like I'm a 9 handicap right now. I want to be a 6. Well, okay, I'm not making progress towards that 6, but as a 9 handicap, I just went out and had a good round and beat one of my buddies, and I feel good about that. And so that's fun for me. And so I think to your point, like maybe it's a kind of like two separate things. They kind of feed each other. If you have a good round, you beat someone, maybe you're going to be more confident to go practice. If you go practice, you're going to win more matches. But I think the competition piece is where I'm focused. And I think for a lot of people who are ex-athlete non-golfers, it's sort of just that competition that drives them. And that is fun. Like it doesn't need to be light, right? It doesn't need to be light and fluffy fun. It can be like competitive, trying to beat up your friends fun, and then you like laugh about it and have a few beers after. But I think less focus on the beating yourself up and being critical of your game, and more focus on how do I compete as like a social activity.
There's almost two sides to this. It's the fun of putting in your score, and then also the opportunity that you're not just playing against yourself when you're out there. You're actually playing against buddies who you might not be seeing at the minute. They might be in a different location, but you can still keep in contact. And as you say, it's maybe an easier way to do it rather than a text message, because then you have to go through your entire round, whereas on your app you can just say, well, there's the evidence, I beat you, hard luck. I saw on the designs of the app as well, I think there was almost like a Facebook post sort of thing, and you had like likes or little like reactions almost to like I don't know whether was it their round or their score. So yeah, maybe tell me a bit about that. Is there almost like a feed of people's performances on it?
So when we first launched it, it was essentially you would play around. So you'd find the place you're playing, put in your scores for the round, and then we had that kind of post-round video recap, which is kind of nice. And then you would post it, and you would have, say you log in, you'd have a feed of all the other people on the app. And then we are getting to the point where we're starting to filter it down by groups. And then once you were looking at somebody's round, you could respond to it with an emoji, essentially. But that was like kind of the original piece when we were starting. We just wanted to make it a little interactive, because if you just post your round and you get nothing back, it's a little boring. So we wanted to make some sort of interaction. And then another feature that we built that ties back to what you're saying about kind of texting while somebody else is playing, putting the pressure on, is we built this little like sort of spectators feature is what we called it. So you could come in, and if your buddy was playing, you can just hit the watch button, and then your avatar would show up, and they'd see that you're basically like paying attention to their round. So put the pressure on a little bit. So we built those two features out to make it a little bit more social, a little bit more interactive. But I felt like it was starting to get too social, or headed more in like a social direction. So I'm not saying we're going to eliminate those features by any means, but that's kind of the product process, right? As you try a couple things, you put stuff out there, you see if it works. It's better if you can get feedback at the design phase than after you've developed something for a couple of weeks or months. But we put a couple out there. I think we'll still use those features for sure, but I think we're going to, as we progress, I should say, I know that we're going to center the next version more around the competition and the battles. Is what we're calling them.
A lot of the features you mentioned there definitely remind me of Strava, the runner app, where you can log your information. And
that's inspiration for sure.
I thought that you'd almost been inspired by that, because that's created like a community around running, which is obviously a very individual pursuit. It can often be quite lonely for people. So that's almost brought people together to say, listen, you can compete against anyone here as long as you just tap the button to say go on your run. And I would use it myself quite religiously. People hate whenever I post that. I'm that guy that posts their Strava and Instagram, just like 5K this morning, just to annoy people.
No, I love it. That's great though.
You also mentioned there, obviously, being from California, and well immersed within the startup ecosystem. So we touched that maybe before we went live there. Do you want to maybe just give your background on how you got involved in the technology side of actually developing apps, and then how that translated to you building a golf app?
Yeah, definitely. So I went to law school right after college, and during law school worked in startups. And actually, one of them was a sports coaching company. So I've been in the world of sports tech for a little bit. Worked for a number of startups, and then started doing some product design during law school, which those two things don't seem to blend together, but they did for me. And then um, after law school, I practiced for like a couple of months and decided that I really hated it, and decided to launch a company called Foundation Lab in 2016, which was product design agency is a word you could use, studio, whatever you want to call it, but it's basically a services business where law firms would come to us with whether it was very specific processes or if it was something they wanted to do that was like information based in a mobile environment, and we would build custom applications for them. So whether it was mobile or web applications, and a lot of the things that they were using were kind of old school, on premise, clunky software. And so we brought like a nice, clean, fresh design approach to the legal industry. And that was great. And we did that for, I guess I'm still doing it part time. And it kind of got to the point where I was reminded that I'm not that interested in the law, and I wanted to make something that I would use, right? Like I didn't use any of the products that we made. Like I was helping our customers, our clients do things, but I didn't use any of them. And so I wanted to make something for myself, kind of like what you're doing, right? Is build something in a space that you know, and build something for yourself that makes your life better. And so I played with a number of different ideas, and I stumbled upon this one, shared it, designed it essentially. So at this point, I do a lot of product design, and designed a prototype of it, shared it with some friends, got really good feedback, and we were kind of off and running in the spring of last year. And so I guess it'll be almost a year in May since we kind of started on this thing. And yeah, we've learned a lot. I think we launched it. Golf is very seasonal in some parts of the US. And so we kind of had a fun beta summer last year with people posting and kind of growing the user base. And then took a little time off in the fall, and then kind of back at it right now, especially with some of the new features. And we're trying to get the competition and then maybe even the betting ready by June of this year.
That's cool.
So that way we can have another fun summer and hopefully have some more people using it and betting and battling each other on the course.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the beta test. So last summer I tried to create like almost a community of caddies around Ireland. So I don't know if you've heard of the app Circle. It's like a community building app. I think it's out of San Francisco as well. They've raised money. So
yeah, I know one of the founders. Yeah.
Really? Wow. Yeah. So we used that app to basically build a community of caddies. So they would post like whenever they've done a caddying round, I'd post maybe job opportunities in there. And we built it to
awesome.
maybe around 130, 140 caddies. And that was like a little starting point for me to learn a bit more about the problems that caddies face. I'd be interested to hear your approach on how you gathered that beta testing group. Like, was it your friends, or how did you actually just set that up?
So I love that story and how you approach it, because I think that's the right way to approach it. I think for me that sometimes it's sometimes constraint is a really valuable thing for a founder, because like if you can't build the app yourself, you got to find ways to test and prove it out. And so I think that's amazing that you did that. That's really strong instincts as a founder, as a product person, just being scrappy. So I love stories like that. I'm the opposite, right? Like I have a team, I know how to design products, I can build things in a few weeks. And in some cases that's dangerous and not useful, right? Because you end up building something that maybe you didn't test well enough, or you didn't spend enough time getting feedback on. And that's okay. There's no necessarily like right way to do it. But what you did is a really good instinct. And it's something I kind of wish that I did. So for me though, because this was for my friends, that's what I started with. I started with getting my friends on it, get my friends using it. I did design, like I said, a prototype, which is just like a paper prototype. I can do those in 4 or 5 hours and get feedback. And I think that's a really important thing that you've probably learned along the way and will continue to learn, is if you can get people to try things and see like the ugly versions, and then they see progress, they get invested and they want to help you and they want to use it and they want to evangelize it. And so I tried to do that. I tried to get my friends looking at the ugly versions, tried to get people using the ugly versions, seeing the progress, using the new features, giving me feedback. It's kind of nice, right? I went from a very formal kind of corporate business to most of my user feedback comes through text messages, right?
Yeah.
Or like I FaceTime a buddy and I'm like, hey, let's talk through this, right? And so I really liked the fact that it's become a lot more informal, and it's cool to try to build a consumer products. I've never built a consumer product. Um, but yeah, for me, getting the beta users was just the fact that it was people I was friends with, which I like also as a starting point. Is like start with something you know, like what do you know? What would you use
Yeah.
versus like what is this big market? What is this massive thing that I can
Yeah.
build? And so
I'm sure
yeah, I like
everyone
this
can
approach.
relate to who's trying to build a product as they see this massive market. They maybe see people that have already tried to launch products in the market and they think, here's this massive insurmountable task. Where do I start? Whereas maybe some advice I got was look to build something for 3 to 5 people and get them to really love it.
Sure.
And then almost start that viral effect of people actually sharing it.
Yeah.
Because you know yourself, like even products like maybe go back to Strava again. I love Strava because it gave me for free statistics on my run. I knew a group of running friends, and now there's maybe a group of 10 or 12 of us that I'd be friendly with in Northern Ireland that would use the app and compete on it. I guess maybe because you're so involved in product design, what do you think makes a good user experience for a golf app? As I'd be really curious to pick your brain sort of on the product side.
Yeah. So I like this equation for human behavior, which is like motivation and ability as like an access. And so you say like, okay, if somebody's highly motivated to do something, then you could have like a pretty clunky product. Like you could have a product that's not perfect, which is why you see like these enterprise products that are trash, like
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft products. The UX is terrible because the company paid for it. They paid for the license. You start your job on day one, and the company's like, here, use
Yeah.
this, and that's it. You don't get a choice, right? In the consumer world, it's a lot different because you have competition, you have multiple products, multiple options that people could use. Um, and so I think familiarity is really important. And then in the golf world, I think because it's so old school paper driven, that's one of the things that I've
Mm-hmm.
struggled with is like getting people to actually use the app to put their scores in. And I have plenty of buddies that use the Grint, which is a great product as well, who are getting used to or are used to using
Mm-hmm.
digital scorecards. But I think in golf, that's one of the craziest parts is like competing with the status quo is often much more difficult than competing with any of
Yeah.
the products that are in the market. And so trying to get people to do something different, like you talked about with these clubs using spreadsheets, or even if they're using like a paper spreadsheet, right? Like just like a printed table with some
Mm-hmm.
columns and rows, right? Like getting people to move off of that is really difficult. And so you need to assess like, okay, is this something that there's high motivation to do? Are they naturally super motivated to do this thing? And if the case is, if it's yes, like if they're super motivated, then you can just give them whatever product you want, right? But I think in the golf world, people are pretty comfortable with how things work. And if they see something that's better, then maybe they'll give it a try. But I think that we're battling kind of like years of DNA, and it's getting better. Like younger generations are getting more used to
Yeah.
the digital experience. But to me, it's like, how do I make it as easy as possible to use this? How do I make it as easy as possible to say, for example, like enter scores? We haven't done this yet, but I eventually see a world in which people who have Apple Watches can basically tap and be like
Yeah.
4, right? Or like 3, just like make it as simple and easy as possible for people to kind of like keep rolling because especially unless you're building like a video game where like the experience is the video game, what you build has to fit into the way a person is operating in their life. And so with golf, like the main thing they're doing is
Yeah.
playing golf. Not the main thing they're doing is not engaging
Exactly.
in
Yeah.
your app. And so trying to build something and understanding, I think the understanding not just the user experience of your product, but the overall user experience and where are the touch points for your product. And so for you, like, can you map the journey for a golfer coming from the States, like all the way back to them
Mm.
booking the trip, right? To leaving after the end of the trip? Like, can you map that whole experience? Like Airbnb has done a great job talking
Mm-hmm.
about this, where they're say like they basically brought in like a Disney character artist or something to draw like
Wow.
storyboard the entire, like a 12 out of 10 Airbnb experience. So I think that's one of the important things with products that aren't essentially anything but video games is like, okay, what does the overall experience look like, and what are our touch points? And so I'm trying to do that. We're not doing a great job of it yet, but trying to figure out a way to just make it as simple as possible to just have it fit into the experience, not be the experience, because we're not a video game.
Yeah, and you touch on simplicity. I think when I went around the clubs, Mike, I think that was their feedback was we want something that's really simple and straightforward to use. That's almost been the center of our philosophy is the simpler, almost the better. I spoke before we went live there about a few mates that I would know that traveled across to San Francisco to build their product. So they were actually a bit of a tangent here, but they were building essentially an app for farmers to monitor when their crops were ripe for harvest, pretty much, and it would notify the farmers based on satellite imagery. So they basically have like hundreds of thousands of miles of satellites and images. So they originally had graphs that they would send the farmer to analyze. So the farmer would have to go in and analyze and say, oh, this graph means that I should work today or not. Whereas I think what they did was that they simplified it just down to a single text. So the whole system compressed the data into one message to say, you need to work today, pretty much. So, and that's all the farmer wanted. He didn't want anything more than that. So I thought that was a really interesting insight as far as simplicity. And obviously them guys have been greatly successful. So it seems to basically be resonate with what everything you say. There is just simplicity is the key.
It's hard though. Simplicity is hard. It's harder than complicated. There's a really cool image. I know we're getting deep on product and less on golf right now, but there's an image of it's like a comparison. It's like Google and Apple products versus your product, and like the top part is like Google is just literally a text box, and then Apple is like press this button, and then your product, and it's like all these different text boxes and all these different things to do. And so I think it's actually easier to just complicate things and add features and do this and change this and make people go through these steps. And so I think simple is usually after you've gone through the complicated. And so like a lot of products end up becoming like you'll see like a first version of it and it's just chaos, and then they start to streamline it. And part of that is finding product market fit, right? Like you're just trying to figure out what the market actually wants. Like maybe you're throwing stuff at them that doesn't make sense. I mentioned a few features earlier, like spectators and the emojis, and I don't know, maybe they'll be valuable, but I could totally see us stripping those away later. I'm not sure, like, or stripping those away in favor of just an easy, elegant chat, right? Something like that. I don't know, but simple is hard. It takes some time to get yourself to simple. You don't usually start with simple.
And I'd be interested as well. So obviously you're in the Bay Area. You're pretty integrated within sort of the startup ecosystem. Is there any other products that are making big plays in the golf space that are starting to emerge out of San Francisco?
Yeah. So there's a couple good products that I don't know. I don't love alerting people to the competition necessarily, but I don't think of us as competing. And I think a lot of them have had the problem that we were just describing, which is they do a ton of things without having like a very streamlined focus, which is what we're trying to do, is be very streamlined. Look, there are other apps you can use. 18 Birdies is a really good one. They're like kind of combination social. I mentioned them earlier. I forget if we were recording or not, but 18 Birdies does social. They have that really cool AI golf coach that I haven't really checked out. I want to check it out. But they're like a legit Silicon Valley, but San Francisco-based startup. I think the founder had started a company or two before. They have a couple million users across the world, so they're doing really well. The Grint, which is a guy in South Florida, his product's really good too. It's kind of similar, more like digital scorecard, a lot more about so speaking of simplicity, like you can just take a picture of your scorecard and it'll upload the score for you. I don't know how that works with like super messy handwriting, but that's a good idea. And so those I think have done a really good job. I'm trying to think what else there is. I mean, even just like it's a good time, I think, in the golf space with respect to mobile apps. Like even the USGA GIN app is really good now. The Golf Handicap Index. It's a really nice, clean mobile app. And actually, they even have they have like this new developer program that we're piloting right now to allow for easy integration with handicaps, because that's obviously an important part of the competition piece. And so I don't know, it just seems like a really good time to be building digital in the golf space. I mean, I know I said that it's kind of an old school pen and paper industry, and it definitely is, but I feel like that's changing. And then the younger generations, and then also just the numbers. And I know COVID had a big impact on this, but just the number of new golfers, um, I think, is growing like crazy. I think it was 2020 was the most new golfers since Tiger's first year on the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
Which is still crazy to think like that's what sparked golf was Tiger playing on the PGA Tour in like 1997 or something, and then COVID.
That's what I was going to say. Just like COVID, like pandemic,
big sparks.
Yeah.
And Tiger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, even in the UK, there's been a bit of a change. So before the pandemic, we had to go into the clubhouse and basically put in our scores manually after the round on like a computer thing. Now basically every golfer in our club has an app. So I don't think we do it during the round at the minute, but at the end of the round we put in our scores, we log it, and then we can see how that affects our handicap. I'm sure is there apps out in the US? You mentioned the USGA app, or are most club golfers using that now?
Yep. Yeah, so that's also, we talked about like ease of use and how do we make it really easy for people. Like right now, you just put in your total score at the end of the round in like gin or whatever you're doing. And so for us, we were trying to ask people to put in each hole score, or the score for each hole, which is more work, right? More work than they wanted to do. So it's like, okay, how do I motivate people to want to do that? And so we have like birdie leaderboards, and we're like calculating things like that to make it worth putting your scores in, because we know that we're going to need that eventually if we want to do match play competition. So yeah, I think that there's plenty of apps, and I think that's what most people are using. And I don't think it's foreign for people to be entering their scores that way, or at least like entering total scores. So yeah, I think it's a good time. And then I got to imagine like some of for you too, like a lot of I don't know, I bet some of the older clubs maybe still have older people managing the caddy process for sure. But I don't know. I think that's starting to change too. You have some younger people who are taking on those responsibilities.
Yeah, I was talking on the last podcast to a guy, Ian. So he's created a product for driving ranges. So it's very similar to ClubGolf. It sort of gamatizes the process of driving ranges, and you can actually hit the target. And then they'll also serve you food and drinks on the app, so you can basically order. So it's making the driving range experience more fun. But I think you touched on a point that the future of the game will always be the youth, because they're going to be the next generation coming forward. So I think the products that we're building have to be focused on a long-term vision of sort of what will this look like in 20, 30, 40 years. And obviously, back to the name of the podcast, I'm really interested in speaking to founders who are looking to be the next sort of foundational names within golf. Just maybe to push back on one thing that we mentioned there. So obviously, some golfers may say that, their round of golf is almost an escape from technology, and that they want to go to the golf course just to forget about the world and go enjoy the round. Have you had a hard time convincing golfers that their round of golf is better actually while using their technology?
Yeah, I think there are people that feel that way. I think I've felt that way at times, where it's nice to just be out there, be quiet, just enjoy. But I also just think that whatever you're building isn't going to be for everyone. And so you just have to expect that some people have a different approach to the way they play. And I also think that for us, I don't expect every time you step on the course for you to have like 10 matches going on in club, right? I think you might have one Saturday match where you're like, all right, I'm going to play a couple 9-hole rounds this week. I'm going to go practice a little bit. And then like, that's my kind of like Sunday football thing, right? Where you're like, okay, I'm going to put everything I have into that 18-hole round. And that 18-hole round is going to be competing against 5 of my friends. And so I think that it's unrealistic to expect everyone to want to play this way and be using the phone when they're playing. And you just got to accept that. Like for you, some clubs just aren't going to get it.
Yeah.
And they're just not going to be down with it. But if you try to build for everyone, like say you went to a club, right? And they're like, hey, the only way we're going to use this is if whatever you do like background checks on every, I don't know, whatever it is. They ask you for some crazy feature, like if you keep saying yes, you end up with like this hyper bloated thing. And so
that's what I was going to say. If you build a feature for everyone, you're going to get this massive app that's not going to ironically be useful for anyone because you're trying to solve every single user problem.
Exactly.
That's interesting. So you mentioned about clubs there. Are you actually approaching clubs and almost trying to get buy-in from them to recommend it to their members, or are you just strictly going B2C?
So I think that's part of it. For me, it's more like distribution is always like this holistic thing, and you got to have multiple touch points. And so I think we haven't done it yet, but I think the goal is to have like if clubs will let us is just put like a QR code download thing, right, where you just kind of like put your phone over it and you can download the app when you're in the clubhouse. I don't know if we'll do anything formal, meaning like I don't know if we'll have any sort of commercial arrangements. I think it's more just like, hey, if we have enough users and people are posting rounds, then it's kind of free advertising a little bit. Would you be willing to just throw something up in the pro shop when people are checking in for those who don't already have it? So yeah, that's kind of where it stands right now. Maybe we'll have more formal partnerships or something like that down the line. But yeah, for now it's more just.
And as far as like the stage you're at with the business at the minute, like you mentioned, you're still part time in the law apps as well. So like, what proportion of your day would the Join ClubGolf actually take out of your time?
So right now, I would say it's like a nights and weekends project for the most part. But I'm hoping that that's going to change in, I don't know, middle of the year maybe. So we're trying to get a little bit further on the product, especially towards kind of where we're ultimately trying to go. And then, yeah, hoping to raise some capital and maybe go full time by the end of this year would be awesome. Kind of just make the transition if possible. We'll see though. I mean, it really depends on this next feature set and the excitement around it and the usage, and if we can kind of show engagement and a real path forward. I'd love to do it.
That was my next question. Actually, I was going to ask are you planning to raise venture capital? But would it really be a Silicon Valley startup if you didn't raise venture capital? So you have to go down that route.
You know. No, it's true.
Yeah.
So the thing that you need to decide though is like, I think for you, if you are going to clubs and the price point is high enough, then you might have a more legit like venture backed opportunity. But I don't know. I spend a lot of time. Some of my closest friends are venture capitalists, and they're looking for very big markets, right? Like billions of people. Golf is still very niche, and so for me, I think that we are going to raise, hopefully, but I think we would be raising from possibly professional investors, but golf enthusiasts, people who want to see this become a reality. I just don't see it as like $1 billion venture-backed business. I actually don't even know what the total addressable would be, but golf is a small market, which I think is helpful too, because it means you don't have a ton of people trying to build for it. And I think some of the products are fairly poor because of that. And so, I don't know. We'll see. But I think doing like a true Silicon Valley startup for a niche market wouldn't work for VCs. Yeah. They'd be like, why are there only 30 million golfers in the US and like only
it's amazing how an investor will literally rule you out just by that top line figure of the addressable market is only like 300 million. When I was starting off, I was like, 300 million, that's huge. I was like, everyone would be involved in this. But in reality, that is the absolute cap of what you can earn. And then when you sort of bring it down to, right, how much could this idea potentially make in a year and how much can it make in 5 years? Then it's a bit more realistic numbers, and that's the ones they'll be looking at, because obviously they want 10x or more in their return ideally. So yeah, I mean that was absolutely fascinating to find out a bit more of your project. We'll return back whenever you've raised your first seed round, and we'll do another one to catch up on your progress there. And I'm sure we'll keep in touch, as I've definitely got a few questions on our product that will be fascinating to run by you as well. If anyone wanted to find out a bit more about your project, or maybe wanted to have a look at the app, where would they go online to check it out? Yeah,
so we have a site that you mentioned at the beginning called joinclubgolf.com. where they can see a little bit of it. Although I'm going to put up a new landing page. We're working on a new landing page this week and next week, so we'll have a little bit more of the kind of future of what Club Golf will look like on that landing page. And then we have an Instagram account. I think it's Join Club Golf. I'd have to check. Let me tell you real quick. Yeah, Join Club Golf is the handle for our Instagram account. So we've just kind of been posting stuff about the product and then just golf in general. So yeah, check us out there. And then if people want to download, we don't have any non-US courses right now. That's something we need to work on. We're working with the USGA on that. They have a lot of Europe data, so course data. So we're going to try to include that at some point. But right now, we're US only.
Awesome. That's brilliant to hear. Mike, absolute pleasure. And I'm sure we'll get in touch soon.
Likewise.
Thanks for watching the episode of this podcast. If you've made it this far, you can continue the fun on Discord, our Twitter, and also subscribe to this YouTube channel.